have questions, interrupt us, ask questions. You know, do be interactive best we can, because like I said, I can't tell by people's faces if they're understanding or if we need to do something different. So we are excited to have everybody here. Apparently all of us are writing REDs and have seen RED before a time or two while writing REDs. So Samantha, I lost where I can see the PowerPoint. She's the Tadal girl. Okay.
So I left the meeting by accident. I apologize.
Well, we're glad you came back.
Thanks.
Good you came back for us. Okay, so we are going to start we're going to just give you ideas that we use a lot of times, because that, you know, at first we were going to go through the training manual, the process manual, and go through word by word. And then we kind of got to thinking about, but maybe you guys have that at your disposal. I mean, you can use the process manual anytime. But we kind of wanted to say, Samantha asked me, she said, what's the first thing you do whenever you sit down to write a RED? So this is kind of what this kind of developed from. We have updated the process manual, so you'll want to go through and make sure that you at least look at that. I am a printer. I always print off the new process manual. I know that doesn't save trees, but I am old and paper is the best way for me. If you haven't printed the copy of the process manual, you may want to take some notes, or we're going to record this, so you will be able to come back and look at anything we have here. We're going to be discussing just the evaluation section of the process manual and kind of maybe refreshing some of your minds of some of the forms that we have inside of in that training piece. And this is where you can always find the process manual if you need to multitask, or we have that on there also. It's on Canvas, right, and in the Google shared drive.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, it is on Google Drive. This is what it looks like, a little lighthouse. That was good. You might need that in the darkness. And this is a link to get to it. So you can click that and go directly to that site.
The process manual is a very helpful tool. Like I said, we want to just give you some helpful tips. Samantha asked me, what are some of the first things you do when you sit down to write a RED? Now, I realize that we are typically writing initial REDs. We have written other kinds of REDs, you know, the reevaluation REDs. But this is kind of what we do, and when we sit down to write a RED. And you have something really good and cold to drink.
Yes, something cold to drink. So our first tip for you is do not wait until the last minute to start a RED. Many of us are quite busy with our lives, and so oftentimes things get put off, but RED is not something that you should be putting off. By RED, we mean a review of existing data.
Yes.
Particularly if you're looking through transfer documents, or you're having to go back and look through multiple layers of evaluations, it's really important that you not wait till the last minute, because if so, you will be missing some key components. Mm-hmm. And why we decided to do this presentation was just because when we go through and review, we are noticing that oftentimes we're missing key components of information that are required in order to say that a child meets eligibility again without having to retest them.
Right. Remember that review of existing data becomes the evaluation. So that's an important document, and that concludes the conclusion from either the initial, how the student initially met eligibility, and all that is brought forward, and we still have to continue to support the fact the student still needs specialized instruction. Now, I will say tip number one, I am a center, and I am saved by grace. So I have not always done this myself, and I do struggle with that sometimes, as we all do. We all have lives, but it is best if you know you have a RED coming up to get stuff and get started on it as early as possible. All right, tip number 2. Okay, this is the one that she asked, what's the first thing I do whenever I start? This is the one that this is what I do when I start. I know it is time consuming, but I have to follow. I follow the, they follow the money trail. I follow the date trail. I follow the evaluation trail. So I go back and I look at where the student initially met eligibility. Sometimes it's easy because maybe it's the first RED after an initial evaluation. Sometimes some of you that are in junior high and high school, you have years and lots of evaluations. So I always get a little Post-it note or a little piece of paper that I keep my notes on, and I go back to the beginning and I make sure that there is I follow that date trail, and I try to make sure that we have evaluated number 1, and we're supposed to be doing the reevaluations. And I also want to know if the reviews of existing data, if there was testing before or if there wasn't testing that needs to be brought forward. So I go through the student's binder, and on a Post-it note, write those dates down from initial eligibility all the way up to current time. Like I said, it does get time consuming, and as I have done that before, I realized we put a lot of stuff and have a lot of stuff in this information in these REDs that really is not necessary, and we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. But for my example, let's say the student was initially met eligibility on 10/20/2012. These are my made up dates. So don't go back and look and see if that's really a school day or not. We did so on that date, at that initial eligibility, that review of existing data meeting, that first meeting, we did that, and we did get permission to test. And then we tested, and then we came back together for that evaluation. So paragraph 1, there's going to be both RED and test information in that initial, when you go back to do that review of existing data the next 3 years, or whenever it was deemed deemed necessary. So the next,
what we are often finding when we have students that we go back and review their information, what we're finding is that RED is in there and the next RED is in there, but no one went back and put in the test results from this one. So that is something that you always have to look for. Was there testing? If there was, it has to be added to that previous RED, and make sure that those test numbers are in there. Remember, looking for numbers because that's how we qualify them.
Right. And you can use your numbers. You can also, if you want to put the range in with the numbers, but in a review of existing data, we have to have the numbers. So we have to, we have those standard scores, the scores that we need. So the next time we met, on the first day of October in 2015, we did a RED with no testing. So you've brought forward the testing information like Samantha just said. So in paragraph 2 is going to be our RED with no testing. This is where in the process manual, you'll see that there's, like where you go to get that information to pull forward. We also have wonderful drop-down boxes in our SPED track that will kind of help you to know what you need to go get. But nothing should say no changes or no concerns. You need to put something in each one of those boxes, like the vision, the hearing, the health, all those. Each box current information. Maybe the kiddo's gone back to the doctor several times, and there's new diagnosis. This is where that's why we want to get you to start early enough. You can contact parent and see if there has been some new doctor information. So then the next time we meet in the next 3 years, we have a RED, or actually maybe because, I kind of ran out of my day. Like I said, I made that stuff on the fly. But we did a RED with testing on the first day of September. That it would be then we did the testing, and that will be our during the review existing data, that would be our paragraph 3. So we did the next RED on 5/4/2021. That will be the next one we do. And you have to make sure that you have included the testing where we got permission to test back in 2018. Make sure you brought that testing forward. Does that kind of make sense how I follow my trail? Does anybody have any better way of doing that?
We also know that if for some reason we get a transfer, I know that never happens around here, but if we do, sometimes our trail is kind of iffy as to what dates things happen. It's okay to just say, according to the information we receive from the transfer, and list those things. But when your process coordinator, if you're not trying to test a kid, your process coordinator is going to make sure that they met that initial criteria, because that's what our requirement is. Now, you can notice as well that oftentimes we see like books of information. We had a previous teacher that was infamous for writing large amounts of information in kindergarten. And so understand that all goes into one paragraph. The initial eligibility is just one big, huge paragraph, and it goes on to the next. So it depends on how many times that kid's been tested. That's how many paragraphs you're going to have. Let's lump it all together so we can easily see this kid has been reviewed 4 times.
And we had I had a student, I came across a RED that really I thought addresses doing the transfer students and how she's gone, the teacher went through and she found all that information. We do have samples. However, we have not been able to, they re-imaged all of our computers. We haven't been able to get the software we need to be able to scan that and get that to you, but we are going to make that available to you, right, Samantha?
Yes, we are. Mm-hmm.
We do have some samples where the teacher those transitions between each one of the paragraphs, and I thought it was a smooth transition, and it makes it easy. We are just, when you're writing a review of existing data, you are just, you're wanting information. Yes, information. We've got to support that disability, but keep in mind, we're not just adding a lot of extra into the review of existing data. Okay. So work, I guess, smarter, not harder. It's not about volume, it's about information. Number 3, permission is granted. You have now been given permission to take out information whenever we go through and we do review of existing data. And you've all sat through these meetings, and we have like page after page after page of information on the same, or whatever section it might be. Go through, make this document yours. Your name is going on this document. Make it, want it to look like, follow that process manual, follow the checklist on the information that is needed. Go through the old information, starting at the eligibility, edit and remove information that is not required. And we know we need required information has to go in there. But if it's just I'm having trouble pulling up extra information that's not really necessary, take that out. You can edit that old information. That old information can be edited. Maybe typing errors, maybe, you kind of go through there. I know some teachers, we had some teachers that will, like, instead of completing the information, they'll put ... meaning come back to it. But for whatever reason, maybe they didn't come back to it and finish that thought. Clean that up. Make it look like something that you are going to be proud of. Dates, test scores, and observations. Make this document. It's kind of like my nephew started a new job yesterday. I told him, I said, son, your name goes on this, and your name is something. Make it look like you want your name to be thought of, what you want to be thought of. So go back through, take that info, like if there's stuff in there that's just not necessary, is not, maybe extra observations, or the day was windy and he was dressed correctly. I mean, unless that's in the adaptive area, take that all out. We don't, that extra fluff is not needed. Anybody have anything to say on that one? Does anybody find it hard or kind of nervous? You're kind of nervous about taking out old information? And Melissa Bacon is not. Don Collins is like myself. He's like a little bit, I'm not sure if I'm the guy that needs to do that. But if there's something missing in that.
For me, it's
what, Don?
I was just going to say, for me, it's always a question of, okay, what was their motive for putting this in there? Was there something, happening that I don't have any knowledge of, that they found this necessary?
If you are receiving anything that has Lori Felton's name on it, she's
Samantha.
Right. She just loved to write. So it's okay to take out some of that extra stuff because it's more important what's the current stuff. Now, you can't take out the scores and the tests. That's important stuff to leave in there. But in early childhood, I'm typing in that they're potty trained. Well, that may not be important when they're in junior high and they're only LD. So that's something you can take out that I would have put in there as an early childhood person.
Anybody else?
Lots of things where we see, excuse me, ... and then nobody went back and filled it in. Or they type in, ask parent where he's living today. Kinds of questions, and then they never go back and fix that. So please go back and clean that up if you see that one of your colleagues made an error and archived too quickly. So also remember that when you're putting scores in, please make sure you're telling them whether it is a standard score or a T-score. Some of our behavior stuff is T-scores, and a 50 for a T-score is good. A 50 for a standard score is not so good. So make sure that you're saying that, and just make it yours. Make it something that when someone looks at it and says, so-and-so filled this out, that you're proud of that work.
I was also going to say something that I end up deleting a lot out is a description of what the test tests.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That paragraph that we have to put in the evaluation report gets copied and pasted and put into the RED, and that doesn't need to be in there.
Yeah, saying that the Woodcock-Johnson is an academic test that tests kids, 3 through 21, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't need to be in there.
Mm-hmm. I always try to look at it as from the parents' point of view. I mean, some of our parents, I'm not saying all of our parents, but there's some of our parents who they themselves probably struggle, and they're handed this thick packet of information, and we want to encourage our parents to be involved and to be, to know what's going on with their child. And I think whenever we hand them these REDs and their sections are 2 or 3 long, I think it's a tad bit overwhelming. I do want the parents to know about their kids, and you do too. And I really, I would rather them read through that and have time to read through that, and maybe, when they get home, but not just a lot of useless information. Remember, we are writing to parents. So, parents don't understand when we start talking scores and things like that. So we want this a parent-friendly, parent-usable document. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have anything extra? Okay. Oh, where do we get the information for each section? that is, once again, in your process manual or even your drop-down boxes. Those drop-down boxes are awesome. That's probably the best thing I have found about SpedTrack. I don't know, that little mask on the SpedTrack is pretty cute. I mean, you know, the little COVID mask. But is being able to have drop-down boxes, and that way it kind of keeps me focused and lined up at where I'm needing to go get that information. Do you guys all want to go through each section and talk about where we get that information? You go to the nurse, you go, you know, you just go to get those information, what you need.
And I would say, for me, when I did the older kids, and now that I'm doing these little bitty 3 through 5-year-olds, I'm like, where do I get information about vision? Sometimes I just have to ask the parent, but for you guys, if you have them in class, they can see the board, they can read a book, they can copy from the board. Those kinds of things are just general observations. You don't have to have the nurses re-screen them every single time. It's okay to use your observations as what information you have. In the health section, you know, they may have missed 45 days of school, but were those 45 days because they were ill, or was it because they like to sleep in? So you can put in there that they missed 45 days of school in the health section if it was because of maybe an illness, but I wouldn't put that in there if it's just because mama didn't make them get up and come to school.
Right. And I do know this year, like I said, and I'm hoping that this is, this is over, but I don't know if this is the rest of our lives or if it's just this year. But we have a lot of kids on launch, and you guys may not have that list yet, but you're going to get the list, and we still have to, they are still ours, and we still have to meet on them. So we do a review of existing data, even in your IEP that you write for these kids on launch, or, if we have to go be out again, God forbid, but you're going to have to rely a lot on the parents and ask them lots of questions. And I've been telling all the parents I've talked to on launch that, hey, your communication back to us is vital, because we'll get that information from you. That's going to be very important. And your feedback, if something's not working, to let us know. So I do know that where we get our information this year is, it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be exciting, and it may be an opportunity for you to work more partnership with the parents.
All right. So each section, remember, in the process manual, there is the green binder checklist. That's something you can fill out, or you can ask a parent to fill out, or a teacher, and gain more information for each of those sections. Use some of those statements. Don't reinvent the wheel. Just use what we already have. And so that's really important. And then you can always use the text boxes.
Yeah.
All right. Tip number 5 was use the examples you're given. Of course, we have not been able to access that, but I will tell you that what we are going to do is I will put together, we have about 3 examples where what we are going to do is we are going to highlight, it's going to be an old review of existing data, just like you would, I'm going to have to summarize this for the next one. And so I'm going to go through and say what test information is important to be in there, what should we not put in there, that sort of thing. So the problem that we came to when trying to make this presentation is we weren't able to black out the names of each of these students. So once we're able to do that, then I can have a folder of examples. So for example, let's say you're talking about the IQ test. It's important to give the full scale score. It's important to give maybe some of the subscale scores. If there's something that's really off, you are an expert. You have been trained. You've taken classes that have discussed all of the standardization and things. So if you see that a kid had a 14 in one area and a 2 in another area on the IQ test, it would be important maybe to note that that's an area of strength or that's an area of weakness. Our testers are very good at summarizing that information. So do you copy and paste that entire test write-up? No, we do not want you to do that. What we want you to do is take out just if there's any pertinent information. But the main thing is to say, this is the date, this is the person who gave it, this is the name of the test, and this was the result, that full scale score. Because that's what's really going to matter whenever you're deciding whether a kid qualifies or not. Mm-hmm. The other thing that we want you to do is make sure that, like I said, you need to look at some of the examples you've been given. In the process manual, there's something that's called a quick reference. And so it says, if you have a student who has autism, these are the areas that you need to make sure you have information in. You need to make sure that there's something listed in all 4 quadrants.
Because remember, you're still supporting that diagnosis.
So that's just really important information. If you're doing LZ, it's really important that you have some current observations, mm-hmm. some processing deficits, you have an IQ and an academic test. Those are things that are really important to have in that RED if you don't want to test that kid again.
Mm-hmm. And, I know a lot of you do informal, informal like assessments where you can kind of see how they're doing reading fluency, those benchmarks, those, some of those informal tests that you give in your classroom. Make sure you do that. Remember, what you put in that information, this review of existing data, is only going to make life easier for you when you start writing goals in the IEP. Because you're still supporting that specialized instruction. And if you review existing data and you can't support that they still, you're struggling how to support that they still need specialized, maybe that's something we need to look at. Maybe that's a conversation to have with your process coordinator. We do have some that there's other reasons. So, have a conversation.
All right. I'm trying to find on my, okay, here we go. I'm going to share this tab. Here is the process manual. Can you guys see that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So in this evaluation section, there are lots of great information. I just want to show you what some of these things that we've been talking about looks like. Referral. Here is the RED writing checklist. Guys, we know that Sam is ultra organized. That's a good way to say that. And so she has made this checklist, and trust us, if it needs to be done, it's on here. So this is a great resource. Even if you don't have one for every RED you do, just having it beside your computer laminated and looking through it and saying, oh yeah, I forgot to add that part. Then the other thing, this is that quick reference. So if you think, if the student is labeled as a student with autism, this is stuff that you need to make sure is in that RED. If it's an emotional disturbance, you need to make sure that this stuff is in that RED. So it tells you exactly what is important to have in there. Also, if you're wondering about interpreting any of the information that you have, you're like, I don't know the difference between a T-score and a standard score. This does tell you, okay? So it will tell you that anything above a 70 is very superior. What that means on a behavior scale is, man, this is an area this kid really has problems with. Is what that means, okay? And then here is our green binder information where you can get phrases if you, don't know how to word something or don't know what belongs in each section. Because when we are writing REDs in our office, we've never met that kid. We've never laid eyes on them. This is all the information that we know about them. Okay.
Sometimes I get hung up. I don't know about you guys. I mean, here's where you can interject. I end up with verbiage. I don't want to write something that is just sounds like something Kelly, from Douglas County writes. So, I try not to do that. So just coming up with verbiage that all helps me. Just kind of a kickstart on how to help me. Does anybody else have any? Do you use that, or is it anybody have any testimonies? What's wrong with Douglas?
What's wrong with Douglas County? Nothing. Nothing's wrong with Douglas County, Scott. Kelly, Kelly's what's wrong with Douglas County?
Junction of TNO. Eligibility. We just kind of talked about that. We kind of talked about each one of those pages. Like I said, it helps you get started. Those scores. Sometimes I need my memory refreshed on what some of those scores are and to kind of help out. So make sure you use that document, that documentation is provided to help you. Don't get hung up and, it's like you tell your kids, with anything that they start to do, if you need to get up and walk away from it, walk away from it. That's why you want to start back early enough and then come back to it. That way you're not so frustrated. We don't want writing a review of existing data to be that frustrating for you. We know you guys are busy and you have enough on your plate. So kind of use the springboards that is provided to you.
Do you all have any handy tips that you could share with us? Because we know that although we write a lot of them, we are in no way an expert. So anybody have any tips or tricks that you use? You all are quiet. This is weird.
Crickets. Well, have you found any of our tips to be useful? Does it kind of get you jogged back up? I know we've been out since March, and has any of this been useful? Good. We want it to be useful. If you have any questions, Samantha Vandenhoek is 9703.
And she's not going to give you her number.
Yeah, and Miller and Mills just said they just say, what would Melissa Bacon do? I do.
That is what you should always ask yourself. What would Melissa Bacon do?
I'm always cautious about making decisions without running that thought through my mind.
Please know that we are here if you ever have any questions or concerns. If you just need to know, hey, is this important information? We would be happy to help with that. I will be sending you all some of the examples as soon as Reggie decides that he can break away from all those other things that are requiring the tech department's attention. We're a little lower on that list, and we totally understand that. So, we will send you those examples so that you can find that helpful. And if you have any questions about what those examples mean or where we got that information, we'd be happy to talk to you about that.
I'm looking forward to a great year. I think it's going to be a year of learning curve for all of us.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I have written down everyone, I believe. So we'll make sure and get that submitted to the tech department so that you can get your payment through PDC, hopefully. And we're going to do this. So have a good day. Okay, guys?
Smile even if you have to use someone else's teeth.
Smile. All right. Bye, guys.
Hey, Kelly, do we need to sign anything to show we were here? Or?
I didn't.
No,
don't
I have it.
Okay.
I have something. So we're good.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to stop recording, I think.
Yeah.
If I can remember how to do that. All right.